Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's Parent and Family Chat. I'm Jenny Schonsberg with the Uw Madison Parent and Family Program, and I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. The University of Wisconsin-Madison recognizes that you are a very important partner in your student success. The Parent and Family Program helps you stay connected to campus and serves as your ongoing resource throughout your student's college career. The program, which started with an informational website, hotline for phone calls, and a dedicated email address, has now expanded to include the Badger Family e-newsletter, our calendar and handbook for Badger families, organized campus events, web chats, and a Chinese and Spanish website, as well as many other resources you can find on our website. You can find more information and resources online at parent.wisc.edu. If we do not cover your question today, or if you think of additional questions during or after the chat, please reach out to us at the Parent and Family Program. And our email address and phone number are parent@uwmad.wisc.edu and 608-262-3977. We are here to help. Today, I would like to thank our partners, McBurney Disability Resource Center, for providing captioning for today's event. You can find the link for captioning in the video description below for those services. Today's chat is with our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Lori Reesor, and is intended for parents and families of new income students at UW Madison. We'll talk about the student transition to college life, some of the ways you can help your student navigate this semester and the year ahead, and the resources available here to support you both. Of course, all are welcome, students and new or experienced college parents alike. Something can be had here for all. Now, I'm thrilled to invite on screen with me UW Madison Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Lori Reesor, and her Chief of Staff, Argyle Wade. Dr. Reesor just completed her third year as the university's first Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs. Her focus is supporting your students' success both in and outside the classroom. Dr. Reesor is a Wisconsin native, was a first-generation college student, and is the proud parent of 2 teenagers, including a rising sophomore right here at UW Madison. Dr. Argyle Wade has 23 years of leadership experience in student services at several higher education institutions. Argyle is also a first-generation college student and has 2 teenagers in high school of his own. Thank you both for joining us, and now I'll hand it over to Argyle to lead our chat with Dr. Reesor.
Thanks, Jenny. It's great to be here, and I really want to reiterate how wonderful the Parent Family Program is as a resource to our parents and our families, and want to say thank you to all the hard work that you all and your staff are doing there on behalf of our families. I also want to encourage anyone who's watching to think about and be aware of a great offer that's coming this summer. In the mailbox, you're going to be getting an award-winning calendar with dates and facts about UW-Madison. It's always exciting to get it, and it's loaded with information, so kind of keep your eyes peeled for that. So, Lori, we just both recently returned from some much-needed vacations. It was nice to get some re-energized a little bit. But I noticed when I came back to campus, there was felt much more active, more activity, things going on. I don't know how it felt for you coming back.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I was literally just had a meeting this morning with a colleague down on the terrace. I call it my outside office to have coffee and meet. And yes, the vibrancy, just people being back on campus, and not as many students certainly, but it's just great to be back. And UW-Madison is always an awesome place in the summer, as you know.
Yeah, it is so great to feel, the return of people to our campus and what the energy they bring in. That's kind of a nice precursor to what we're going to hopefully see this fall and feel this fall, even more so. So maybe let's just kind of jump into this if you're okay. We have a variety of topics we want to kind of talk through and, get some of your advice on how we think about transition back for our families and our students. And, as you and I have careers in higher education that span many years, many institutions. We work with thousands of students and families, and every student's unique, and every year is unique, as we testament to last year. But there's some similarities as well as students transition back to campus. Things we've learned over our time that help maybe would be seeds of wisdom to drop to the next group coming in. And we've seen the important role that families and parents can have in their students' transition, especially given the challenges from this past year. So I thought that would be a good place for us to start and think about what is the role of a parent, what is the role of families as the students would move into this next space in the fall.
No, that's a great question and a great place to start. First, again, thanks to Parent and Family Programs for hosting this event and for all the great work that they do. And really thank you to all of our parents who are online and in general, just your support for your student choosing UW Madison and certainly for joining us today. I would say I would kind of start with a little bit of sort of the stereotype that parents have right now of college students. It's not always very positive. So you hear these terms of helicopter parents, and those are those parents that hover and, controlling and trying to take care of everything for their student. We have I call it the Wisconsin snowplow parent. And that's the parent that wants to pave the way. They want to clear away all the snow and the ice and make things really easy for the student. And honestly, I think those are really negative stereotypes of parents. Certainly, maybe a little bit of justification every now and then, but parenting's just different today. I parent my children, not my students, my children, differently than my parents raised me, differently than their parents raised them. And so that's just part of the natural perspective of life. So what I think is really important to start as a philosophy is we believe parents are partners. We believe that we share this common interest and goal of student success. We all want our students to be successful. We provide a lot of support and resources for our students, and we want to make sure our parents know about that, because we know oftentimes you're going to be the first person that your students are going to call when they have questions. So again, that partnership is super important. The other thing I just want to acknowledge is sort of, Argyle, your reference to what this last year has been like, and it's been horrendous for everybody. And there's been a lot of loss in lots and lots of different ways in different spaces. And so we know, obviously, that this last year was not the same for anybody, for us on campus, for, anybody that's, that we have this shared experience of this pandemic, but it certainly affected all of us differently. But we really want to acknowledge the loss of the senior year for our incoming first year students, what that means academically, what that means socially, what losses they had as for sports or co-curricular events, and what does that really mean as they come in and start their new first year at UW Madison. So again, I know we're going to talk about all those things, but bottom line is we know that it's just important to stay connected and be partners with our parents. So we're really excited about today and to be able to talk about those things.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that, and thinking about how this year is so unique from any other freshman class we're actually, have experienced, and we're ready for that. I know that our team is doing a lot to prepare for that, and we'll get into some of those details. When I think about kind of this question, I always assume good intent by families and parents, in terms of supporting their student. I think sometimes the confusion for a family member or a parent is kind of in what actions, because we kind of work on maybe old tapes or old ways of supporting students that sometimes don't translate in for this new experience they're getting ready to have. And, I think that's a transition that families need to think about making, just like the student is transitioning. They're transitioning as well right now, too. So, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I think that I've seen some parents come in with good intent, but sometimes choose ways of doing it that don't always support their student. I had an example in a different institution I worked in. I actually had a mother who moved into the residence hall room with her daughter, and the roommate came up to my office 4 or 5 days after school started and says, "Is it normal that my roommate's mom is living in our room?" And I said, "No, it's not normal." And I went down to the room and knocked on the door, and sure enough, Mom was there. And she was great and beautiful, and we had a good conversation. But it was good intent, bad execution.
Yeah. And again, as a reminder that Jenny had mentioned, so I have a first year student. So, it's one thing, as you and I have talked about, that it's, we've worked with students our whole careers, love working with students, love working with parents. It's different when it's your own, right? And so again, I have that lived experience of 1 year of having a rising sophomore, and now I have a rising senior. And so I certainly empathize and live those experiences as well. So yes, we have many personal stories that we could share. We'll keep those brief, hopefully, but
yeah, right. We'll keep it brief. And my guess is each student is going to be different, right? Your two will not be the same, even though maybe that's an easy thing to assume.
Exactly.
So.
exactly. Perfect.
So
Exactly.
we kind of touched on this a little bit about, this year being a unique and unusual. And we know we've heard from families who said, hey, is my student ready to come into UW-Madison? Did they get everything they needed out of high school? It's an academically rigorous place to come into. They're coming off a year that's not normal. There's been some virtual sessions that we have predated this, and they're going to come in terms of resources for students and families, and talking about open office hours for professors and tutoring sessions and study groups. All that's going to be part of the things that you're going to increasingly be aware of. What advice do you think you'd like to share about how to help students and families navigate kind of maybe the fears or the self-doubt that might be part of this year's group different than others?
Yeah, that's a great question and a hard one, to be honest, because I think that we used the phrase of grace in providing grace and patience and flexibility all this last year. There is no question we're all going to need another dose of that for this next year too, because we just don't know. We know how hard K-12 teachers worked and what saints they were in trying to manage K-12 education. We know how hard our faculty worked at the institution of doing so many courses online. And for many, it was a really positive experience. For some, it was super hard, and super hard for our educators as well as super hard for our students. So I appreciate the worry that our students may not feel as ready or as prepared. We know that. We are working with our instructors to have those conversations. I think that I heard many positive stories from our students last year of how flexible and accommodating and supportive our faculty were, understanding everybody was living through this pandemic. And I think the question is, are we going to go back to normal? And what does normal look like, right? And so this whole phrase of this, it's going to be a new normal. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. So do I think our professors may start swinging back and go back to some higher expectations? Possibly. And in some ways they should, and we want them to. Do I think our faculty will also be more understanding of the life situations and the experiences that every student is bringing in? I do. And so again, how do we, these pendulums swing back and forth, and how do we find that space, knowing that every student is unique and their family situations are super unique as well? So again, all of that to say, to not make assumptions, to make sure people are communicating, to make sure people are asking for help. And that's where the role of the parent can be. And we talk a lot about, we want the parent to be a coach and advisor, so not to make those calls for the student, but to say, did you go see your faculty member or your instructor during office hours? Have you emailed your instructor? I did, they didn't respond. Try again. Call the department office, right? So as a parent, how do you help the student navigate this system? This is a big, complex institution. There's no question about it. We have students who are incredibly resilient, know how to manage that, but this is a whole new space for them. And we have a whole group of rising sophomores that don't know how to do this either. So where they may go to their sibling or their friends or some of those things, they might be like, I don't know, I didn't have to do that last year. I didn't go to this space, or I didn't go to that office. And so again, we have two generations or two classes of students, who have a lot of growing and learning to do. And as a campus, we have a lot of growing and learning to do. So know that we're trying to do some additional programming and support, but it's going to take all of us to be patient, and we need the parents to help support their students during this transition.
So I love that you talked about, the mentoring and coaching versus the doing for. How do you fight that gut instinct when a call or an email or a text comes in, to not just jump in and be the doer? Do you have any ways that you check yourself, or you've heard other families check themselves?
Yeah, it's always hard, right? So I think it literally is to pause, and instead of problem solving, to reflect back and to ask questions. What have you done? What do you think you should do? What do you do? And really to kind of help them problem solve. Okay, when you start that, if you do step A and step B and that doesn't work, then what are you going to do? Because a lot of times it's like, and it'll all come through text, right? I tried that. Nobody answered. Nobody. Well, okay, try again, right? And so, but these are life skills that, some have had experience doing, but as a mom, I have done a lot of that stuff for my kid. And so it'd be like, I make their appointments. I do those things. I've done that for 18 years. And honestly, I love doing that. So that's the point that you made,
Mm,
right? Is like, is it about me or is it about them? Do I want to do that so I can feel important and loved and still a part of their lives? Or do I need to help them figure out how to manage that? And then does that mean they don't need me as much? They do need you. They do
right,
need you. They're not going to tell you that. They're not,
right.
well, maybe they will, right? In a fury of tears at times, but they do need you. They just need you in different ways. That's
Yeah.
the important thing.
Yeah, it's so right on and difficult at the same time. So if anybody watching, finds themselves falling down in it every once in a while, it's okay. You'll have another opportunity, probably an hour later, to do it different. They're going to keep reaching out to you.
Yeah,
How you respond.
yeah, and actually, Ariel, that's a perfect example because, as you know, right, like it builds up, right, and then they call home. They explode, they dump it all on you. They're like, oh, and you know what? Most of the time they feel better. You
Yeah.
on the other end are like, oh my God, what do I do? How do I
The
manage
best.
that? Yeah, and you're the best. And they're like, thank you.
Right. They're back on to having lunch with their friends. So
Exactly. And then
yeah,
you're like, well, how are you doing? And they're like, I'm fine. Like, what are you talking
yeah,
about? Right. Yeah, it's
yeah,
a
yeah,
weird kind of process. So yeah, it's
yeah.
both ways for sure.
Another thing that'll be different about this fall is, this transition back to in person, right? And I just maybe want to touch on that for a second, get your thoughts here. Is, while some people are looking forward to getting back in person and excited about that, there might be others who are more hesitant, who are kind of tentative about it. Any thoughts about what that's going to be like for, how a family could support a student who's now saying, hey, I'm in class with people and I'm not sure about this, and it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you and I are dealing with that with our staff, and we're really, as campus leaders, dealing with that with our faculty and staff and instructors at the institution, because you and I have been back in the buildings for quite a while. So again, I'm like, this is good, this is normal, and happy to see everybody. But for some people that still haven't been back, and that would be like our students, some may not have that experience. So again, that anxiety and that stress is super important. So I know CDC and everybody's talked about this. The most important thing we can do is to ask our students to get vaccinated. And we are so grateful that many, many of our students have gotten vaccinated, as well as our faculty and staff. And so that is medically the best protection that we can all do for ourselves, for our campus, and for the greater community. Please, please, please ask your student to get vaccinated. And make sure that they send those records to us so that we can track that. It's not required, but we really, really are trying to just help track, so we know how many people are vaccinated, and that provides, I think, a lot of comfort and ease. At the same time, we know not everybody can do that, and there's special medical conditions or other reasons that people are choosing to not do that. And so, we just, and we'll have people who will choose to mask, and we'll have people who will want to make that decision. And I think we're all trying to respect choices and respect and honor people's decision making, and not make judgments about what they're doing or why they're doing it. And so again, those are great life lessons for all of us to learn, but that will be a new space for some of our students. And it'll be really important for them to be thoughtful about how other people are dealing with this.
And you and I both know this applies to in the class, but also outside the class. Like, everything's gonna have that flavor, that feel to it. I know that when I was traveling, I noticed other parts of the country felt different. So it made me think about our students who are coming here from those parts of the country. How are they going to feel about Madison? Because Madison will feel different to them than where they're living. And so, I don't know if you have other ideas about, not just in the classroom, kind of how do you get used to the new normal, but, just in general, what people need to think of as they're kind of, moving into that space.
Well, and think about our international students, right? So we have students coming from all over the world that are coming here. So again, we should not as Americans, make assumptions about them or their backgrounds or their experience or expectations related to COVID or the vaccine. And nor hopefully will they do that for us. So I think, again, it's just having conversations about that. What do you feel most comfortable with? I know I have a colleague who is going through some pretty difficult medical issues, so they are wearing a mask more often. And as a team, we said, if you want us to mask up, we will all mask up if that helps make you feel more comfortable. So again, I think these are just this new normal that we just have to have conversations about. And it kind of feels strange and awkward. Are you okay if I give you a hug? Are you okay if, with this physical distance, and knowing that people are going to change every day. And so again, to not make assumptions and to just really have good communication. And bottom line is respect, right? That's always an important guideline for everything that we do, and trying so hard. I think that's an important educational opportunity for us with our students, to teach them how to respect people, different backgrounds, different beliefs, different behaviors, and to understand that, and to most importantly, respect that.
Yeah, I think this, it's like anytime you get out of practice doing something like your muscles, right? You have to build the muscles back up, and we have physical muscles, and we have emotional muscles and intellectual muscles. And I think this will be the stretch we're going to ask ourselves and our students to be making as they're kind of rolling into this fall. So
absolutely.
Let's transition. Let's kind of pivot to other, I think, challenges that families and students are facing. We know there's been economic hardships. We know there's been racial and social injustice that's also been occurring parallel to this entire pandemic. That's put additional stress on some students and their families. What about supporting our students, and what advice you have for parents and families who are supporting their students through those traumas? As they're coming into this environment?
Yeah, a couple things I would say. One is we're really doing some intentional work in this area, especially with our counselors, our mental health counselors and advisors and other folks that really are front line with our students, of a trauma-based response. And not to promote Oprah's new book, but Oprah has a new book, and it's titled What Happened to You versus What's Wrong with You, or What's the Matter with You. And so to understand and to really be intentional that every student will bring their own life experiences. And we shouldn't assume that whatever the spectrum is, that's what their life is going to be. That's what their life was, or that's what their life currently is, right? And so to try to be really thoughtful and supportive of our students in that, and knowing that many students had a really hard year, as we kind of talked about earlier, for all of those reasons. And so coming back could still feel stressful. It could be so exciting and relieving. And then will they be out of control, right? Like freedom. And we know that's a normal first year experience, and that's great, but will it be magnified because they're a little bit more stressed and anxious? I don't know. And so we're truly, let me use the analogy of stamina and building up muscles. And so again, they're probably not in shape, right? Academically, they may not be in shape in terms of extracurricular or co-curricular activities and time management, right? So again, most of our students are all of our students are incredibly smart and talented, but they may have to kind of remember how to do those things. And I was just talking to a colleague this morning and just saying, you know what, I got to get back to, you can feel the excitement and intensity building up on campus, and it's just so different than what we experienced last year. And so I got to get ready for that. And what does that mean? And, I was joking that I'm wearing like grown-up shoes today, as opposed to my slippers that I wore at home. My feet aren't really happy about that. So it goes from, little things of, again, all of our students managing, how do I get from class A to class B? And we have sophomores who did not have to manage that, right? So it's going to be it could be a little chaotic. It could be a little bumpy. And again, I think this grace and flexibility and patience and deep breaths, we'll get there. We'll figure it out. It'll all be okay. And so I just think patience is just going to be the key until we kind of all get I don't know, I can't keep my sports, or I'm not a runner, so my running analogy. So maybe whatever it is preparing for the marathon, just think, I don't know, I'm not a marathon runner. I'm going to run my first lap around the track and see how I do, but eventually build up to, get back to that marathon kind of shape. So I totally blew that analogy. That was terrible. Hopefully you get it.
I get it. I mean, I think we all have our favorite sports, right, or ways of getting perspiration. So it's not and I think we want to recognize it's not an even race, right? I mean, there are people who are having to do 2 laps to my 1 lap because they're coming from a place where I have power and privilege, or I have economic privilege. And I think that's one of the things that we've tried to key in on last year, but it's not a thing you ever stop thinking about. And so, I guess maybe what are your thoughts about, students who are experiencing those additional burdens, and where do you think, if they're needing support, what are some additional places they could turn to, knowing that we want to be sensitive to, any of the traumas people are experiencing?
Yeah, thank you so much, Argyle. That is a huge point in understanding, again, the various backgrounds and some of the opportunities and privileges that some students have and some students do not. And so as an example, I know I was talking with a senior, graduating senior last year, who's a first generation college student like you and I are, and how that whole imposter syndrome creeps in of, do I belong here? Am I sure I'm ready for this? And that's hard, and that's real, and that's legitimate, and that's an extra pressure and layer of stress and anxiety that some of our other students do not have to face. And so I think there's two key pieces on this. One, we have great support and resources for our students. And so for students who come from underrepresented students, we have great cultural centers on campus, a multicultural student center, a gender and sexuality campus center that have staff who share students' identities, who can understand what it feels like to be a student of color on a predominantly white institution, and what those challenges and experiences might feel like as opposed to some of our white students. At the same time, all of our students need to ask for help. And that's a big growth opportunity. And again, I hope and think that maybe we got a little bit better of that as a society last year. But again, I think it could be one of those easy things of, okay, well, now it's back and I'm normal, and what's wrong with me? Why haven't I adjusted? Why haven't I figured this out? Why am I so stressed? We have resources for students, and that as a parent, encourage them to ask for help. It is not a weakness. It does not mean they're not welcome. It does not mean that they are not capable or will succeed. Their best strategy is to take advantage of so many of the staff and resources and the instructors and faculty who are all here because we want our students to succeed. Our goal is not to weed them out. Our goal is not to say, the survival of the fittest, but we want every student who has been admitted to this university to be successful and to graduate from here in a timely way. So that's a very, very strong commitment. And we need parents to partner and say, again, who have you called? Who have you talked to? And if the student doesn't know, and maybe they're really struggling, then you please call us and we can give you that information so that you can also then in turn help those students. So again, asking for help is a really, really important thing before it gets to that crisis level. It's okay to get a tutor initially, first day of class, first week of class. Maybe that topic isn't your strength. Get a tutor right away. Don't wait till right before the final. By then it's probably too late. So if you know yourself and know that whatever subject matter is more challenging for you, then reach out and sign up to get a tutor and use those resources and services. Again, great life lessons for all of us.
It's probably the place I find students to fall down the most, is that kind of delaying the ask. Out of all the conversations I have, it generally falls back to, I knew I wasn't doing well, but I thought I could pull it together. They're so used to maybe have kind of done it in another place, another time, that they think, well, I'll just do it again. And this is not the same place and same time. I think it works against some people's prior success, works against sometimes their future success. And
totally.
So as a family, I think try to help them understand that this is not exactly the same thing they've experienced.
Right. No, I can remember, I was a straight A student in high school. I got my first C in college. I felt like I had failed, and I thought I should drop out, and I thought I don't deserve to be here. This was all a fake, and I should leave. And I'm so grateful that I didn't. But again, for our students, it'll be that first A- or that first non-perfect grade, because so many of our students have just excelled so high academically. And so again, it's really looking at that big picture, in that grades are not always the most important thing, and we want to focus on learning, and to not feel, and this is the parent thing, they're going to be worried about disappointing you, right? And so how do we manage our own expectations of what our students are supposed to be doing or not? And so again, if we say, oh my gosh, you were this super rock star in high school, and you're going to do the exact same thing in college, and you get your first B, then you feel like you failed and you feel like you've disappointed your family. And so again, just having really honest conversations about all those things I think are super important.
So a couple of just others to throw in before we transition on. So I mean, University Health Services is a great spot for all students. The Office of Financial Aid, Dean of Students Office, these are places you'll hear more and more about. And we're continuing some of the virtual services that we started last year, but we're adding those on to the in-person services we always offered. So there actually should be more opportunity than ever for a student to engage in the way that like fits their schedule, their time, their modality. So just know that we've taken some of the lessons from last year and we're kind of moving them forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I think you'll see, especially us in some of the student services areas, doing more hybrids, right? So again, if it's, warning families from the West Coast, it could be really cold in the winter time and your student might be like, I'm not getting out of bed. We will offer more virtual meetings for students so that if they want to meet with somebody but don't want to get, walk across campus, or there's 2 feet of snow on the ground or something, then those options are there. But at the same time, we are committed to going back and creating this true residential experience. We know our students are thriving and seeking that so much. And so are we. So are our instructors. So are the faculty and staff that work in the institution. We want to be around students and kind of get back to that. So yeah, I think those options will certainly be there. And I think it's also important that we did, because of all of us living through this pandemic last year, all of us together, I think we were better at seeing students that were struggling, seeing students who might need help, and doing more outreach to them of, you haven't been in class, or you haven't turned in some assignments. And I know that was a struggle for the K-12 schools, right? Because where's that balance of giving respect and knowing that students and families are managing a lot, and where's that intrusive? So we're still trying to figure that out as well. But I think that I can see us doing more outreach, knowing that, again, we're going to continue to deal with some of the stress and anxiety that we all experienced this last year, but especially for our students.
So moving on, because I know there's a couple other issues that you really wanted to touch on, and let's turn to housing assignments if we could, because I know that is a big milestone for families. All things start to feel more real when you see a building and a room number and possibly a roommate's name. It can also lead to anxiety, additional kind of concerns about, is this going to be a good match? How about, will my COVID, mindset interface with theirs? Any thoughts about how you coach parents and families to work their student through that process of now thinking about, the housing process that they're now have kind of completed, but now it's going to become real with an actual move-in and a roommate?
Yeah, so it's a both and, right? So you're going to have all ends of the spectrum, from really excited and can't wait and all these things, and this is all exactly what I hoped for, or, oh, this wasn't my first choice of my res hall. And so just know that lots of students are in that experience, and I do believe that it all works out. And so again, for some, this is kind of that first experience of life's not perfect. And we don't always get what we want. I wish we did, right? Don't you wish we did? And so,
yeah.
It's like, this is what I want. Why
Right.
is the world lining up and giving me everything that I want? So, so again, as a parent, your first instinct might be like, okay, I'm going to call, we got to get this changed. Or, how are you going to make the most of this? Yes, there's disappointment, honor that, deal with those emotions. It's okay to feel hurt and disappointed, but it's not devastating. It's not the end of the world. And so how do we manage this, and how do we make the most of it? And what do we learn from it? So, it's all the normal things. And I know you worked in housing for a long time, but it's all those, again, communication, clearing, managing expectations. You and I joke about, just these are life lessons that you carry forth with your partners. If you can't say who's going to make the bed today, then guess what? Those carry through with you for the rest of your life, should you choose to be partnered with somebody. So, and those are hard. Those are hard things at 18. But I think the more you can be clear about that, the more you can, like you were saying on the other issues, not let them bubble up, but just kind of keep addressing them. I had a student who said to me a couple weeks ago that one of the things they learned was how to be clear about their expectations. And And they were saying, you know, their room was kind of the hub in the residence hall, and students, you know, they had not lots of friends. They had a small group, a little pod because of COVID, but they would have people over, and then they would be like, okay, I got to go to bed. I got a, you know, early class. And so it'd be like, bye-bye, you know, you guys have to go. Those are hard things to do sometimes, but it's your life, it's your academic career. So students really need to have that experience and to be able to talk about, are we going to have people in the room late at night, or do you get up early, or all those kind of nuances. Those are all important things. And as you said, COVID adds another layer, right? So are you going to be safe? Are you going to tell me if you have symptoms? How are you going to manage this so that we can all be as safe as possible? So again, open communication, clear communication, constant communication, I think are all really important guidelines that are important life lessons for all of us.
And I know that, you know, there's been some surveying of our students who are going to be living in housing for the fall, and it looks like, you know, we're in the mid to high 90s for vaccination rates based on self-reporting. Of course, it's not, you know, scientifically accurate, but, you know, a response rate that's in the high 80s. I think we're going to feel pretty confident that we're going to have a environment where lots of students are vaccinated, still need to have conversations, still don't want to take things for assumptions. You know, you want to be able to be on the same page with your roommate, but I hope that would help families feel comfortable, more secure, more confident about putting their child in a, you know, communal living setting, which, you know, the residence halls and a lot of students living there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, just a reminder to ask students and families to upload their vaccination records so that we just have accurate information. It just helps us, one, you know, we want to know all students' vaccine records because it just helps us if students get sick or they're, you know, visiting University Health Services on campus. But then, as you said, it also just helps us gauge where we are in terms of a campus and to build that confidence, because again, the more people that are vaccinated, the better we can fight this this virus.
I do want to throw in that as a freshman and a sophomore, I lived in a triple. And so while I know there are some people that, you know, the double room experience is kind of the traditional mindset, we're going to have students in housing of differing sizes rooms this fall. And that's not a normal. We do that. Most falls will probably have that in some ways, you know, more this year. But it's not a situation that can't be successful. In fact, and sometimes it works out well. If one roommate's not available to go to dinner, you got one more to turn to, say, hey, you want to go grab something. You have to, you know, there's dynamics, right? You add another person to the mix, you gotta, you know, figure out how now the three of us get along. But I just want to maybe reassure people that it's not a bad situation. It can actually kind of work out really well. And it's just another thing to kind of navigate, but don't see it as something that if you're, you know, an area of disappointment or we need to fix this. I would let it ride if you can.
Yeah, no, you know, I didn't know you had that same situation. I did too as a freshman, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I was in a triple as well. And so, yes, I think the challenge was I had two boyfriends of them to manage as opposed to just one. And that's a different whole story. But yes, it was nice. I had two very different roommates. We did fine. And so, yeah. And in fact, as you know, sometimes when we have more, you know, students in lounges and you know, these triples or quads, they don't want to move. They, you know,
they love it.
They like, you know, like you said, more social opportunities. So yeah, what feels like maybe not, you know, not so great or a little disappointment actually works out really well for most of our students.
Yeah, I found the biggest thing is navigating when you study, because if there's always people in the room, but then do your studying at the library and come back and have the room be, you know, more social.
Yes, so. Yes, and that's a nice thing this year is that all those opportunities will be back. So again,
right.
You know, our sophomores will need to figure out how to retool all of that too, and to really learn what those resources are. So again, we'll have two classes of students that are going to be learning all of that, and we're being really intentional about all of that too.
Yeah. Now we know that there were some families who don't have a housing assignment yet. For, you know, various reasons in terms of application deadlines and things like that. We know that could be stressful for those small number of families that are in that situation. Advice for how a student can still start strong and how a family can support their students starting strong, even if they're not living on campus, have chosen not to or not able to live on campus.
Yeah, because we know that we're going to have more students in that space. We're going to be more intentional to do some outreach from our Center for First Year Experience to connect with those students so that they can have more community. I know some of our apartment buildings or off-campus residence halls kind of operate in similar ways that we do on campus, so that can be an expectation. But yeah, I think it's just, providing more guidance and support, or additional guidance and support for your student to, and we can talk about this, that, especially at the beginning of the year, there's lots of activities. Get out, don't just stay in your apartment, take advantage, go, work out, join some clubs, go study at the library, be intentional to meet students in classes. And so all of those things will be super important for our students to take advantage of.
And I just want to maybe be clear as well, is that all the things that Lori and I are talking about that happen outside of housing or any student can take advantage of, no matter where you live. Your University Health Services, RecWell, the Wisconsin Welcome slate of activities that the Center for First Year Experience puts on. I mean, it doesn't matter where you live. Those are open, available, and you should be taking advantage of those. Sometimes the family just needs to push out, and say, hey, instead of coming home for the night or the weekend, where, are you going to go back to campus this weekend and, be part of that, and looking for those opportunities. It's comfortable and easy sometimes to go home, right? And when you go home, you don't always go back out. So I think that's something to think about. We do know that, just to also clarify that if you've signed a housing contract with University Housing, you haven't been assigned a room yet, you will be assigned a room. There's just a process to go through to get to that place where you get an actual assignment. If you don't have a contract with University Housing, we do have a service on campus called the Campus Area Housing Team, which is part of our Campus and Visitor Relations Department. And they have excellent resources on our university website to connect and find roommates, to find housing vendors off campus. And so, think about looking on our website for campus area housing and, look at the resources there if that's something that would help you. So transitioning over to campus engagement, we kind of touched on, what are all the things you can do on campus? What are the ways to be involved? And I know, as I said earlier, we're both excited about the return to the more traditional campus experience for the fall. And what would you say you're looking most forward to for our students in terms of the things you think are coming for them?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's so many. So maybe I'll just, maybe a couple to start with. So I think we've talked about, we have this program called Wisconsin Welcome. It's our welcome week, and there will be an app for students to use that will show all the events. And there will be a ton of events from, smaller kind of things that some smaller groups of students may want to do to, kind of larger events. But some of the more signature events that I'm super excited about, one is Convocation, and that's really the bookend of the start of the academic year. So a lot of our events are all social and fun, and then Convocation is a little bit more, not formal per se, but the formal in that the chancellor and the senior leaders and the deans and I and all other folks are in our caps and gowns. We process through in the Cole Center, so it feels a little bit, again, this bookend of Convocation to graduation. But it's really the formal welcome from the chancellor to say, we're so glad you're here. But it's also a chance to be like, I'm here, right? And you see the whole class is there, and we have some really cool things that we're excited about. So, we did last year's Convocation was virtual, and it was, some videos, and it was fine. It was good. We did our best we can, but just excited to feel that energy and to see students. And then we highlight our Go Big Read. So we have a book that we're all going to read together this year. And then there'll be lunch and ice cream and all just kinds of fun things. So it's just the energy and the excitement is just super fun. So there's just so many different events that we're planning for students. And again, opportunities, not everybody likes big crowds and big spaces, and maybe not so much because of this year, because of the pandemic. So there'll be some smaller things too that students can do. We're trying to find a little bit for everybody, right? Because we have so many. We have a large class coming in, which we're super excited about, a very diverse class, and people come in with different interests and expectations. So trying to do a little bit for everybody so that everybody feels welcome and can find some space. And then, again, I know most of our parents today may be from first-year students, but we're doing some intentional programming for sophomores as well. So wanting to make sure, because they missed a lot of things last year. So we're doing a scavenger hunt for them so that they can learn where offices are on campus, and I had a staff member who's brand new she's been here for over a year, but she was all virtual mostly of this year. And so a colleague said, well, let's go to let's walk up the hill and go to Bascom. And she's like, what hill? She didn't realize that Bascom was on a hill and had Bascom Hall. And so again, think about it, like some of our sophomores may not know that because they just haven't been around. So again, we're going to try to reorient lots of people that missed a number of things this last year. But so that's the exciting part, right? Is like, we're all going to be welcoming back, and we're all going to be, hopefully eventually excited about being here. And again, respecting everybody's not going to be at that place at that same time, but hopefully people will feel more comfortable and to start to do that.
So it sounds like, what I hear you saying is we have a good slate of things for traditional freshmen, some new things, some continuing back and bringing back the things we had done before, but this new track of, activities for rising sophomores who maybe didn't get the traditional experience they had last year. And many of those are going to be new activities, things we haven't done before with this specific group. So that's exciting. So, if you're a family who has another student here or knows of someone who does, we hope you'd help spread the word on that. I do know that fraternity and sorority life is an interest for both freshmen and upperclassmen. Will there be rush this year? What's the process looking like from what you know right now?
Yeah, no, those are good questions. For the more for Interfraternity Council and Panhellenic Council, for those two groups that have a more coordinated recruitment effort, yes, we will be doing recruitment. I think it will be a little bit more of a hybrid, at least for the women. I know they learned some things virtually from doing all virtual recruitment last year. So there will be some things that I think might be virtual. And I think some of the students were excited about that and appreciated that opportunity, but there will certainly also be more in person. And Fraternity and Sorority Life will be hosting a virtual session in August for students and parents who are interested in learning more about that program. So we have 4 councils for fraternities and sororities. So the Panhellenic Association, the Interfraternity Council, the National Panhellenic Council, MPHC, which is historically African American sororities and fraternities, and then our Multicultural Greek Council. So again, lots of opportunities for students to get involved in different councils and different groups if Greek life or fraternity sorority life is right for them, or they want to pursue it and just check it out and look into it. We have great programs and student organizations in those spaces.
So I just want to follow back on a topic I think we kind of touched on earlier, but sometimes people join a little later and don't hear our whole conversation. I think it's just really important. So if you don't mind, just to kind of back to the idea that while we're hoping that college, is more of the normal experience this fall, there's probably going to be some circumstances where it may not quite meet expectations. And that may have nothing to do with COVID. It just might mean I thought college was going to be X and it turned out to be Y. It could be things like, I didn't get the room assignment I wanted, or I didn't get this football tickets, or I didn't, this classes are harder than I thought they were going to be. So just, to really bring this point home, again, what would you say in terms of supporting the student through that either sense of loss or just disappointment that they might feel, and how does the family help them kind of turn the corner a little bit on that?
Yeah, I live this, truly with both of my kids. One that will be a rising sophomore, so they went through their first year here at Uw Madison, lived on campus, and went through the pandemic here. And then I have a rising senior in high school, and so who had a really hard junior year, a super hard junior year. So I think it's important to acknowledge that disappointment and that loss. And I've heard from some rising sophomores this kind of like a little bit of envy, like, I didn't get this last year. I didn't get to do this. And it's not fair that all these new freshmen get to do this. And I didn't get to do that as a sophomore. And that is totally legitimate and totally important to acknowledge that. At the same time, it is what it is, right? And so at some point you can, being disappointed is important to acknowledge. And I think just any feelings are always important to acknowledge, but then it's also looking for, but what did you learn during that opportunity? And what can you do now? What can you make up for now? Because, rising sophomores, you have 3 more years. Rising, our juniors and seniors, you have 2 or 1 more year. And so you get to do, some of those things that some of our seniors last year didn't get to do. And so, again, it just all is what it is. So trying to find those silver linings, trying to help them, recalibrate, I think is just really, really important. But, we're super excited for football to be back, and, all of our sports, which, our students love participating in. We still did, we were amazing hockey teams last year. And so there's just volleyball. I mean, there's just so many opportunities and for our student athletes and for our students to just participate and support in those spaces. So it is real. The loss is real. The anxiety, the fear is real. And honestly, we know that more students, actually more people in the world, experience more anxiety and depression. And so we know that more of our students are going to come in with some of those difficult mental health issues. And we're doing everything we can to prepare for that and to help support our students in those spaces.
Yeah, I have to remind myself a lot with my teenage kids that adversity isn't necessarily bad in and of itself. That, and it's hard to not see my child get everything that they want.
Right.
But the right level of adversity coupled with the right level of support, I think, creates the kind of growth that I would want a college student to experience. It's finding that balance. And trying to adjust the levels, a little more, challenge, a little more support, or a little less of one or the other. It's good to have to kind of wrestle with hard things and then realize, I climbed that mountain, and that's preparing me for the next mountain I didn't see yet. And you build confidence through it, I think that. And hopefully, if you're sitting there thinking like that's, you find yourself a month from now sitting in a spot going, this is hard for me to watch them struggle. Know that there are people here who are helping, but it also might just be a good natural thing too.
Yeah, exactly. Because like you said, we all experience a lot of loss and disappointment, but it's naive to think it'll all be perfect this year. It won't be.
Right.
It won't be. It
never is.
Yeah, it never is. Exactly right. And so there will be different losses, different expectations. And I think, again, it's important to just support and to honor that. And what may seem trivial to you is not, right? These are big things in their lives. And so, so respecting that and honoring that is super important. At the same time, your student better than anybody. And if you are really worried because they're not pivoting, they're not adjusting, they're not coming out of this funk or space that you are really worried about, please call us. Please call us. Let us know. Let us also reach out, because again, we're going to do what we can to be aware of that, but it's a big place. And we put a lot of onus on students. And then this is where the families can be super helpful to be like, I don't think they're doing well. And we can reach out. Sometimes students still don't respond to us, but oftentimes they need the help, they want the help, and they appreciate that. So again, that partnership with our parents is so, so important.
Yeah, that's why we're so grateful that so many of you are watching with us today. And, if you have people who didn't get on, these will be available to view later, or, talk to your friends who maybe missed it and encourage them to take a look at this. I think given the time, if you don't mind, Lori, I just want to maybe move to final thoughts and advice for families, as we've covered a lot of territory here. I don't know if there's any pearls of wisdom left, but let's see if we can squeeze one or two more out before we close off. As I was reflecting back on our conversation, the thing that I sometimes want to bring out is that this is a stressful time. It's supposed to be a stressful time because of the amount of transition that's happening for the student and for the family. And so if your family is experiencing ups and downs, don't think you're alone. This is a natural part of the process. This is what it entails. Your family is not different than anybody else. If you're having arguments and times where the student disappears for a while and you don't know what's going on, and sometimes when they're overly talkative and doesn't seem to be who they are, it's all part of the normal transition to college, and it will come back to normal. And don't rush off and think you need to do a huge family intervention all of a sudden because things don't feel quite right. This is how it works. What about you, Lori? Things that you're thinking of that you want to leave with the families?
Yeah, no, that's great advice, Argyle. And we talked a lot about, because I think, it's easy to experience the joys, right? And it's easy, I mean, relatively, right? It's easy when they get good grades or love their instructor or, became president of organization or met somebody from another country and all those things. Those are easy to do. So what we spend a little bit more time is sort of those harder and bumpier things, not because we think that's going to be their whole experience. Of course it won't be, but that's the harder space, right, to deal with. So I think we focus on that a little bit more to make sure parents have those strategies and that we can help them be successful and in turn help their students be successful. So I would just echo, again, know your student. You know your student better than anybody. Stay in close touch with them, support them, but also give them space. They need to learn how to manage these things on their own. And as we've said, sometimes some bumps in the road are important life lessons because life's not perfect, because everything doesn't go our way. And so figuring out it's about this resilience, right? That's what we're trying to teach them. Not life's perfect and somebody will take care of everything for you, but to be successful in life, how do you overcome those obstacles and how do you demonstrate that teamwork and you've met people from different places and yourself, right? Those are all perfect things or not perfect things. Those are all life things that we want our students to learn about. And so I think, being able to honor those students, but also I would just say grace. That was kind of my buzzword for this last year, grace and patience, that it's going to be bumpy, that, we may disappoint folks because they thought something was going to be, again, just perfect, or, the sidewalks wouldn't be crowded. The sidewalks are going to be crowded. Make sure you build time in to get from class to class, right? And, there might be
buses will be crowded.
Buses will be crowded, and you have to worry
about. And that's fun and joyous.
Yes. And so, again, everybody's going through this together. So please just be kind, and grace and gratitude, I think, are just great, important life lessons for all of us. And I think on my final note was just our commitments to you from UW-Madison. We will provide excellent services to help your student be healthy and engaged. We will continue to strive to create a campus community and a campus climate where every single student feels welcomed. And we will provide support to help your students both inside and outside the classroom. And we will partner with you throughout this entire experience. So thank you so much for all of your efforts and work in getting these young people to UW-Madison. And we can't wait for this transition and to have them on campus.
With that, I think we'll bring Ginny back in to wrap us up.
Yeah, hello again. Thank you both so much for your time and your insights today. Just for everyone watching, as a reminder, this session is recorded, and so you can go and watch it again anytime following the exact same links you used to get here. Or if you want to share with another family member or maybe a friend that would appreciate this advice, please do so. And you can always ask follow-up questions, and we will get back to you and help kind of sort those things out. If you enjoyed today's event today and you're looking for more great tips and conversation, we are hosting a final summer chat on Wednesday, August 4th, this time in prime time from 6 to 7 p.m. Central. That event will be a panel discussion again with many campus experts just discussing the landscape of fall, and it'll be a great chance for you to get any of those remaining questions you may have answered. We also want to remind everyone to please save the date for our signature event of the year, Family Weekend. This year, we're going to host both in-person and virtual programming options, and that will be the weekend of October 8th through 10th. Registration for Family Weekend will open on Thursday, August 12th. Lastly, the Parent and Family Program is your go-to resource. We're happy to answer any of the questions you have about this conversation today or any other topic that may come up to help you support your student. You can visit our website at any time at parent.wisc.edu or contact us via phone or email. Thank you for joining us today, and take care. On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.